thank everybody for joining us here. What we're going to do is two parts. This part we're going to talk about the pool, the facility, what we have, what we don't have. And then we're going to go over to the library, I think at TC, and finish our meeting there. Tell us about the history, tell us a little bit about it and how we're doing it, maybe. Greg can tell us a little bit about the shape of things.
Okay, this used to be the old Skyline Recreation Center. It was built by Oak Forest Association. If you go across Springside, there's a residential area on the other side of Springside that's Oak Forest. And they built this facility for their community center.
And when was that?
Nobody seems to...
It was 6 years prior.
Okay.
6 years prior.
So we're looking around 48 years ago.
Okay.
It was built as a party place and a place for their kids to swim during the winter. And they began to have financial trouble. And at that time, Harold Zeugner was head of the community schools coordinator. And he talked the commissioners into purchasing it from Oak Forest. And Buncombe County's had it ever since. And when Buncombe County purchased it, they came in, this is a long time ago, and ripped up the left side, did away with the majority of the garage doors. And then eventually they had to do the rest over here because they've been working in it. And in 1995, we talked the county into recovering it. They came in and took the walls and the roof off and replaced it. H&M Construction, I believe, did the work. It is a 25-yard by 35-foot pool, which means it's 6 lanes. We have a room upstairs that starts on the inside of this fireplace and encompasses both sides. It is our dance room, party room, whatever room. It's a fine room. It's got a gorgeous wooden floor on it. We have 2 bathrooms down here. The women's room has 2 showers, 3 toilets. And you dress and take a shower in the same 15 feet. The men's room has 2 showers, 2 toilets, and 2 urinals. The deck space you see, I will tell you, last Tuesday night we had a swim team meet of Reynolds, Robertson, and West Henderson. We had 250 people in here. And we had another 200 people in here on Thursday for another swim meet before. So the deck space is not big enough to be able to do what we need to do here. The pool is not big enough.
What other functions besides school?
We do lap swim water exercise. We had 11 parties this month.
How far do people travel to have parties for areas?
We have some from Black Mountain, Madison County, Cameron, Canton, Hendersonville.
I think these are swim parties, or
They use
parties?
swim parties, yeah.
Okay, so it's not like you go up there and have a big party.
We only have 2 or 3 of those during the year that they don't use.
Terry, you want to talk to me a little bit about the scope of the schools and the number of swimmers that are coming in now?
Okay, middle of August, we start middle school swim team. And we have a team from Valley Springs, Cane Creek, and Fairview, and they come within a 2-hour period on Monday and Wednesday. And there's 50 swimmers. And then we have another group that does military training here in the evenings. We also have the YMCA swims here that doesn't have room in their 3 swimming pools. They come just about all year long.
Really? They don't have enough room?
They've got over 100 swimmers, and they can't put them in their pools.
Including the new and yellow.
Last of October, we start the high school swim team. They allot 44 per team, and they're all full. We have Robertson, 44 kids. We have Reynolds, 44 kids. We have West Henderson with about 30 kids. This year we're accommodating Asheville High the best we can when they need to practice here. And the Y still comes when we can get them in. And after swim team season is over, which is about the first weekend, second weekend in February, we will turn around and start the Special Olympics swim team. and then a military training group, and then the Y will come back 3 days a week.
Are there any other Buncombe County high schools that have to go somewhere else?
Yes, Owen has a team, they go to Warren Milton. North Buncombe has a team, they go to Mars Hill. Irwin has a team, they go to Asheville School.
What about you?
Inca does not have a team, and Pickens Fitz, I don't know where they would go if they need. Because at Asheville High also practices Price School, and let's see, Carolina Day also practices at Asheville School. And Asheville School has their own school.
So how many pools are there in?
The
How
only
many pools are
county,
the schools using in the county? Just this one or why?
no, they are not going to the Y. As I say, Irwin practices at Asheville School.
Okay.
Asheville High practices at Asheville School. And they get fired.
So are there other county pools?
This is the only county pool there is. Indoor pool there is. UNCA has a pool, but they charge like $50 an hour to rent their pool for the swimming.
How many outdoor pools do you have?
Five.
Now, didn't Buncombe County give some money to Asheville Pool, UNC Asheville Pool? I was thinking we gave them like
They
that.
gave them $500,000 for the track.
For their track and baseball.
Track, okay,
Yes,
it wasn't pool.
it was not the pool. And when they built their new facility, they did not, the Sherrill Center, there's not a pool there, so that pool, my understanding, is in the basement of Justice
Yes, it is.
still. So it's one of the old, that pool's gotta be the age of this one.
They-
We have some close to that.
And they have come in and repainted the walls, put new light fixtures in, and got new lane lines and put new diving stands for their women's swim team. If they had to add Title IX, made them have another women's sport, so they chose swim team. So their old swim team practices there, and as far as I know, there are no schools that practice everything in Florida.
And did you say Asheville, UNC Asheville has a new pool?
No.
It's about the old one.
It's the old pool, it's just they painted the walls and the deck and put new lights up to kind of give it a fresher look.
And it's underneath Justice Gym? That's where it used to be.
It's in the basement.
I assume it's an 8-lane pool there.
No, it is a 6-lane pool.
It's like this?
Yes, it was 6 lane, 4 feet to 10 feet.
It's so small.
This one here, it is, especially if you look at Red Park. They don't build pools usually this small, they're usually 25 yards by 25 meters. So the lanes are at least 8 feet wide.
Is there any facility where they have diving and stuff like that?
All the swim teams that have a couple, 3 divers, all go to the WCA twice a week, pay $50 an hour for that deep end. The only diving board in this area is still at the Y level. You know, I'm wrong, I'm supposed to. Come here, boy.
Jerry's been with the county how many years?
I got 32 years, I've got 30 full-time and 2 or 3 part-time. I've been out here 20 plus. Rick, is there
There's
anything?
chlorine in your blood.
I understand. I can go in there and first cut around that breathing in there.
Yeah, what about the condition, leaking and what's going on in there?
The county did do a 1995 renovation, which included the new roof, the new side. We basically redid everything. We bought what's called a Decton unit, which did fuel heating, cooling. And that 95 renovation pretty much just went to the pool and didn't do a whole lot of heating there right now.
Started from only,
Right.
from the
So,
home.
since 95, we're back to one now where we're probably, except for walls, until recently, we were in the worst shape than we were in 95. We had to replace the Decton unit, $80,000 this year. And the roof of this structure is completely shot. There's no danger of it falling and hurting somebody. But it was so deteriorated, but that we have a paint. We're at the point now where we just basically got to take the whole roof off, back to steel version to start over, which is going to be somewhere shy of $100,000 in that. The short answer is, no matter what you do, that building out there, you're still building over top of a 50-year-old, too small pool deck to accomplish what we want to do. Coming on this side of the wall, the ADA issues that we have out there, there's nothing in this compliance at all. So we did a study almost 2 years ago now on this that said we need $500,000 just to confront the ADA issues. That's primarily access to cooking, access to the upstairs, and making your locker rooms handicap accessible to the compliance. You got all the right turning radiuses, you got the right big stalls, you got separations between the showers, the toilets, all those things that this pool is going to have. This structure is not in that bad shape. Like the pool surface is, it was really since I went through there. I mean, I don't think we had hardly any leaks upstairs. The only problem we got upstairs is all the hallways that you know, there's no turning radius in the kitchens. The doors are 32-inch doors instead of 36-inch doors. So basically what it boiled down to is these block walls, which are largely worth $2 a square foot to $10 a square foot, is only usable in this building. So you got to come in here, do the 8 acre block, each building is going to be able to come out and build that from scratch, which we would never do this configuration again. You would stay away from 2 levels if at all possible. We would just build a single level building that kind of parking, which is just not. And have the access egress. If you really get it, I want to keep this photo, I'll tell you, but there are only $1 million. And you're really going to have the same thing you got now. Only going to be 80 acre high.
So are you landlocked, or expanding this?
There's 2.6 acres in this parcel. 2.38 acres, just for the section. It's 2.6 or 2.38 acres. I think we never looked at it today. This is the parcel that was conveyed to county schools in conveyance for the same hill parcel. So we can do landslide. And y'all want to speak to the deal behind the land swap, that's fine, and I can. The county commissioners agreed to rebuild a covered pool with pretty definite ideas behind it. On this parcel, we bring fronting spring side, providing an 8-lane, whatever.
6-foot pool.
Yeah, 6 foot all the grounds, it's 100 meters wide, 1
Yeah,
meter long.
they wanted 25 by 25 yard, they wanted to start at 6 feet, and preferably go to a 12-foot deeper instead of thinking at that.
But we have, that was signed, so there's a regular place to do that. It requires that the sides be removable and the roof be removable. I think we can do this today and make sure it's what we all want. But that was done as part of the commission. So we're kind of locked into that right now.
When was the land swap?
It was 2000, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you later. 2009. I thought it was 9, but they just said.
That agreement between Montgomery County Commissioners and the school system, right? So that agreement can, as you said, shouldn't be a problem with this, because it seems like some of the restrictions that are on there is probably a little more weird than what's out there. Especially if we're going to try to meet the need of the entire county, well, not the entire county, but as much as possible. That's why I asked about the Atlanta. If you're going to meet the need, then I want to make sure we're being good stewards of the money, which
any conversation with NCS about doing a bigger return?
There was a task force that was meeting with a lot of representatives from the county, mission hospitals and AV Tech and UNCA and the National Aquatic Center, and that we had a lot of momentum and they looked at a lot of different options. But we hit 2007 and that task force was disbanded.
Just economic conditions? Is there a report that they ever came up with, or minutes, or?
Not that I know, but I will check.
What was the gist of outcome of the discussion of that? What was the board thinking about?
The group that's been going back and forth is just interested in getting an indoor facility. And whether it was in conjunction with AV Tech or UNCA or on another piece of property or a piece of property the county had, just really looking at a competitive pool, an indoor pool, where regional meets can be held. So there were a lot of different thoughts as to where it could be, but there was not the funding at that point to move ahead with studies on any particular piece of property.
From an economic development perspective, is there any place regionally where regional needs are met?
Regional needs, regionally, the only pool I know right now that's new and I have not seen yet is the new one in Kingsport, Tennessee. I don't know if they're doing regional competition. I would assume yes.
There's one in Morgan too, that was just,
Is there one down there like that?
yeah, there's some parts in there. And I don't know, it's just,
That's what it is. The question I've got, is there a distinction between this function, which is, I guess, what I think of the community board, versus the regional facility? I guess we've got two elements in the budget right now, or your capital plan. So you've already basically accounted for those in your planning. I guess one of the questions I've got is there a, maybe it's Kingsport or Morgan or wherever, I'd say, is there some kind of set of metrics that defines what a state-of-the-art community pool like this looks like with the best set of parameters? Where do you go to find that?
We've got several studies that have been done by a couple different people in the past. And whether you're talking a competition pool, and when you talk, Gary will tell you 3.5 feet's not deep enough for turns. But if you get up too much deeper than that, you can't teach classes and have water aerobics. So you've got a gentle, so your distinction is huge.
You need multiple places.
You need multiple tools to address multiple issues. If you want to teach baby swim, you need a warmer pool. Or water exercise, they need, I'm sure they have a specific temperature for that. Having been at the YWCA for many years, I can remember the distinction between water warm enough for the babies and too warm for the lap swimmers. So when we looked at a couple different pools, we looked at therapy pool versus lap pool versus a competition pool. So we've looked at 3 different types of pools that might be considered an aquatic center. Some places like Kingsport, they put in an outdoor feature. They put in a lazy river outside, as I understand in the designs, and a track and some indoor fitness facilities. So they really go on a much bigger facility than just swimming.
And I think I heard this. I mean, we've got a cost, kind of wish list cost of what a replacement pool here would cost. To George's question about specifications for that, I'm assuming that is just for one pool. You all were talking about that earlier.
Well, we've got $2.7 million in there, one covered pool, basically. Then there's a $30 million line for the outdoor pool used to cost us about, that's what we built, 1.3
That's across the last outdoor.
So we used to say an outdoor pool is $1 million, a covered pool is $2 million. So now it's kind of bumped up to 1.5, 2.5, 2.7. But that really doesn't allow you, that's not saying, okay, I'm building something that you can put 200 people on the deck. Because if I build one nowadays and I tell them, okay, I'm going to have 200 people on the deck, they're gonna make the building big enough to legally house 200 people, exits to get them out, and everything associated with it. So you gotta really be careful when you say, we're gonna keep this for 2.7. If you're gonna build something like 200 people, and this is when you may, you may be up to 3.2, 3.5. The money jumps as the size jumps.
I guess what I was wondering naively is if you had looked at the feasibility of building 2 pools, you know, one small one perhaps for that baby swim, water aerobics, that kind of thing, and if there were any efficiencies to be realized in having a regular pool that has that term space that you're the competition, because it sounds like a lot of our schools are using this, but there's also a community function, swimming class function. And I just wondered if you all had looked at that, or is there a blend between the two that would work?
There could be a blend, and part of it's where the location is, because depending on what components you put, depends on the amount of parking and the amount of outdoor space and the number of shower facilities and baby changing facilities and all those other things that would go with it here. So it's a great question. There's not been the research that I know of to go out to the community to say, if we build it, will you come to here, or would you rather go to there? There's not been that outreach component yet that I know of.
Can you have high school swim meets and outdoor pools, or is that forbidden?
I wish Sharon's here because she would speak to what they do at Recreation Park. She would be the one for me to ask that question.
We looked at Cohen Park and using it for setting up the different swimming lanes. We realized that you'd have to go in and place a barrier in the pool. So we would have to go in and basically cut the pool back up, put this barrier in the proper length to give them something to turn and kick off of and go another way. So it can be done. Basically, it's a bad band-aid for, if this pool was to be shut down, we had to do something for a year. That's what we were looking at. So that's a 5-year plan. This building gets shut down. So we get a new center pool.
The outdoor season here, though, really, without a really great outdoor pool, is very short.
Yeah.
And it's usually when the schools aren't in session.
Yeah.
So yes, there are master swimmers, and there are a lot of people that will swim, but not necessarily during the school year.
And it was 800,000 for the double outdoor pool, so it would be there's that agreement.
Jerry, they were asking about an outdoor
Please do it on
competition.
page 2, section 4.
You all have done 2 studies. What was the subject of those 2 studies?
There's been several. One was to look at what we would need to do on this building. One of them was to say, what would an 8-lane pool, competition pool, single pool, what would a aquatic center cost? We also looked at what it would cost to enclose an outdoor pool that we already own. So there's been 4 or 5 different studies in the last 10 years, just to look at all the options. Now, these were not architectural drawings. These were not what it would cost to build. These weren't construction drawings. They were what would be the ballpark number that we would need to look at with the county. And several of the studies that were done early on were as if you already had property. So when you have property costs, we look at the cost of buildings, not the cost of properties.
So within these studies, has a community or regional needs assessment been done?
No, it has not.
If you were starting over again, if you had nothing here, if this weren't here, you had a blank slate, would you envision building a distributing model where you've got pods located in different locations around the county, or would you build a centralized facility that would be large enough to attract people from throughout the county? Which way would you head?
Jerry has a very strong feeling.
One centralized facility that can accommodate swim teams, lappers, water fitness people, and therapy people.
Is there a way to, assuming that's the case, is there a way to phase something like that so that you could do it in bites?
Very much so there is, but apart from, the biggest thing you gotta realize is if you did that plan, and you've got, okay, we're gonna start here, we're gonna end up here 10 years from now, you're probably talking about 5 to 6 to 8 acres or something.
Right.
That's on the convergence of, 40 to 26 and central. I mean, there have been some studies. I mean,
6 to 8?
6 to 8? Okay.
there have been, we did some case studies and planned and identified the parcels that were available. And, there was not that many.
So if you built it somewhere else, what would happen to this property? You have to revert it back to the Montgomery County schools?
Question for power lines and that.
For me, the big question is, can we meet the need of the county or community or the school?
One side. And that's it.
Can you meet it? Okay, and because if you can,
If you were asking me from a construction standpoint, I would say no, you cannot build an aquatic center on the level that means clothing on this piece of property. If you look at the way it lays, and the water on that side of it, even the parking, or something like that, once it's built out total, we're probably talking about parking for $4,000. You need that many buildings up there, that would be them. It's the potential of it. So we're going to have a lot of ground.
so when you say aquatic centers have more than one building, or
It can be one building, it can be half a dozen.
can we meet the need with one building with a great pool with plenty of seats?
You have to have, if you're gonna meet the high school needs, you need a 50-meter pool. But then, that's only for the high school. And you need another pool to meet everybody else's.
That's what I was saying.
Right.
See, a 50-meter pool, I could put Reynolds Robertson and another team in that swimming pool every day. 5 afternoons a week, or whatever. But then, there's no room for the other people to use. And a competitive pool doesn't need to be 83 degrees, and 80 is fine for them.
It's 50 meters, but we have to
50 meters of length, 25 yards is the width. And high school swim yardage, swim 25 yards. It's about 24 lanes in one of those pools.
So what you need is 2 pools and a baby pool? Is that the?
Well, you need a big pool and then a smaller pool for recreation.
And then a baby pool?
It'd be nice to.
And then does that also encompass what you just mentioned, Fran, of having the different depths for different purposes?
Yes. The competitive pool would all be one depth. But not everybody, I used to tease Fran when we talked about this before, building a pool here and having the whole thing 6 feet is fine for high school swim team kids. It's not for teaching swimming lessons, and she would have to wear a life jacket.
And so what you need is, I try to envision, I guess, what the comprehensive need is, and so you have basically a competition pool. Then you've got a community pool. Does that community pool have the ability in one pool to do teaching and swimming laps and all that? So the depth is not an issue.
3 to 6 feet.
Okay. And then you need a baby pool, that's it. You got 3 pools.
Or not.
Or not. You can teach in 3 feet of water.
Okay.
So that
2 pools is what you need.
And that requires a question of a comprehensive community regional assessment has not been done.
Right.
Which is back to your point.
Right.
I never will.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to get
It
an
would
idea.
also consider if we had a facility like that, what would these high schools do to improve health and wellness for those students? And what is the expandability of a facility? You know, if we don't decide to build a big aquatic center, what is the expandability of a facility toward what needs are projected by the school or communities and learning? mean, we're talking about all this, we're not talking about diving, and we just heard that there's only one place to do diving.
Why WCA?
Why did you see it?
We've also not had a conversation with colleges to find out what their teaching needs, their class needs might be, and what might be possibilities. That happened in 2007, but it's not been a conversation since then. What other ways to improve safety, to improve health, and to improve wellness are out there, in addition to the very important high school student kids.
Well, you certainly don't want to come out here and look at the facility which you know needs to be fixed. You know there's a great need. And you don't want to knee jerk and, okay, well, let's take care of this and the dollars are not bad, let's go ahead and do this. But you don't want to do that. Because that may not be the best thing for the community long term. So there's no question the need is here, but after coming this one, the need's a little bit greater in hearing the volume that you're dealing with.
Are there, in that needs assessment, identifying potential partnerships with colleges or even corporations, whether it's use for funding or sponsorships? I mean, I think I'd like to see a needs assessment done, and I would like to see potential partnerships explored for a wide variety of reasons that would also consider potential revenue stream to help with operating costs of the new facility.
So if we do some kind of, I like studying as long as the experts are doing it. You guys, y'all sound like experts to me. As long as you're part of what comes back to us. I mean, I doubt there's anybody in the county or anybody you bring in from the East Coast is going to be much sharper than her and know what the needs are.
It seems to me that one of the things that would help you in your expertise is to be able to have access to other models where you can go and expand your expertise. Your authorities on what's here and what you have. But I think our job is to help you go figure out what to do and what is it you might be able to do that you haven't really even contemplated because you've been sort of constrained by.
Well, they never really been released to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go, because the white people I used to do the study, I built, with architects over 5 or 6 buildings in charge. So they built, the outdoor rules, the swimming rules.
Right.
So, I know that there's a piece of there. Nobody's ever said, okay, well, that's really when you pull the trigger and say, okay, yes, we're ready to go.
Would y'all kind of agree with Karen, or it sounded like Karen was going, that a needs assessment is probably the first step? To see, instead of like what Joe's saying, we don't want to just replace it and say, oh good, we replaced it. Is that the first place to have you feel? And how much would that, what kind of cost?
I
You have a ballpark?
no idea on that.
The last study we did, it was $50,000. So, I would think, I feel like I can call those folks and ask them if they're going to bring up everybody's office to use. They have a local office, but they're headquartered up there, and see if they can come up with a number.
Is that good with the committee? Go ahead and have him look at that. Yeah, when you call, maybe, I don't know if you have to do a request for a proposal for that kind of thing, or is that a personal service? Get legal about that.
But I would build it beyond just the community. I'll build a component of that into visioning what's out there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's what I'm And I would recommend, I don't know whether there's cost to it, but if y'all have not been over to Kingsport and seen that regional center, I think that would be a really good thing to do. Or the one in Morganton, and let's see what the potentials are. I mean, certainly you go to college schools around here with those and see what those facilities offer, and that should be part of the needs assessment.
This is maybe a silly comparison, but I spent a whole lot of money building my house. Like going looking at other houses. It saved a whole lot of stress between my wife and I. Because once we saw it, we said, okay, that's it. You know, and it seems to me that, you know, we can, and I'm not disagreeing with your study at all, okay, so don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Is that if you see, you know, a facility that was just, here's one that's in between, here's a medium size, here's one that's bigger, probably what we need. We went and looked at those, and maybe we could take into the possibility of B, you know, A, B, C. Okay, well, B's going to meet our needs because A's what we got. But it struck me when I went to Morganton last week, we drove to a little town, Morganton, and I went, hey, I'm going to accept. You know, and it was on a side road, a shortcut that I take to Wilkesboro. And it's right, but it was right across from a large park where they have red, white, and bluegrass. Over there they have some other things. It was just right there. I didn't turn and go look at it, but you could easily go look at it. I'll look at it.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Very good, very enlightening. Why don't we adjourn and go over to the library here? Anything else? Anything else, Terry? Great, thank y'all for being here. As still Edgeline. Let me call us to order today. So let's start off with public comment. We usually do that. It's not on our agenda, but that's we need to do that. That's our regular format. So, any extra agendas? You got something? All right. So, any public comment today? Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I guess you got as wit as I did. Two questions. One is, why is the CRA on fast track? Because it seems to be pushing pretty fast. I thought it was going to be something to be developed pretty quick for the employee situation, but this seems to be awful fast the way it's moving. The other thing is, after listening to the Aquatic Center and all the other things that's needed from what you're looking at, are there any private kinds of things that are done that the county wouldn't have to be investing in, and include that in whatever you're surveying to see if there's private things out there that might make money by building something and doing things rather than the county investing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any other public comment today? All right, thank you. Basically, public comment, the way we normally do this, we take everything under advisement. Of course, we want to know what the public's thinking. Mr. Rice raised a good point. We don't respond. It's not something that, you know, we're expected to go, this is our opinion, and go around the room and poll us or anything like that. But I would ask that that be incorporated into future considerations and needs assessment. Thank you. Because that's exactly why we have public comments, to make our judgment sharper and more, include everybody that has an interest in it. It took time to come here. So thank you, Mr. Rice.
Thank you, sir.
All right, is there, let's start, is there a motion to approve? We may not in time we have get through all the agenda. That's going to happen a lot. We're a new group. We're still trying to feel our way, how we're going to do things. But I'd like to start off, is there a motion to follow the agenda as we have published it?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kern, second by Ms. Tessier. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll call a question. All those in favor of following the agenda as it has been published, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And for the record, I'll note that Commissioner Frost is not present today, so that would be a 6-0 vote to proceed as we have. The next order of business is consideration of minutes of the November 12 meeting that are attached to the package. Is there any discussion?
Move that.
There's been a motion by Mr. Briggs to accept. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Johnson to accept. Any discussion, any changes, alterations, or comments about the budget? About the minutes? If not, all those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. And we will approve the minutes as they've been set out. I'll just take a minute. There was a lot of discussion at our initial meeting to get down the weeds and really wrestle with our budget as it exists today. And that was one of our original goals in the meeting today. Dr. Wanda Green, our county manager, who is intimately familiar with the budget and has a bird's eye view of all departments, including these two that are now merged, is out of town. And so that's why we're not doing that one today. That'll be one we will do earlier, as soon as we can get her here and go through line by line some of the questions that we had last time, because I think, you know, it's something we really need to understand before we go forward and do anything, is what the budget is and what it's not. So we heard that, it just didn't work out for this meeting. So the next order of business, any questions about that? I just felt it was really important to have her here to, I think that, I'm sure that Ed and Fran could answer 90% of our questions, but there may be a few things in there that we don't know, and with her overall look at things, it would be helpful to have her here too. Okay. Next up, we have appointment of a Community Development Funding Committee and consideration of appointment of the Facilities Committee. Let's talk about Community Development Funding Committee. What's the thought of the board on that?
Do we have a list of what we're not funding?
Well, it kind of goes toward that earlier point about really understanding what the budget is and what it is not. Now, we do not have that knowledge. No. You know, you have everything. I think we have, and then we did give some numbers, but I forgot what tab. But I don't think the detail that this board was wanting and needs to have. No.
I think at this point, and Fran jumped in because I will misstep on at least part of this. There are two broad categories of funding that appear in the CRA's budget. And we need to, our recommendation, staff recommendation is that we set up a committee that will essentially lay out what the process is going to be. So there's some money in the current budget that needs to be allocated. So we need to know, in effect, how we're going to notify these groups. And there essentially are two broad categories. Probably the most immediate is there's a community recreation grants. That's a relatively small amount of money. It's about $42,000. But it has been vital for funding both small-scale recreation programs, even some, at times, maintenance and repair issues in some of the community clubs around Washington County. So that money exists, and we need to get going on telling those folks, in fact, what the program this year is going to be, because that money needs to be allocated out, in fact, spent out by June 30th as we end the fiscal year. So there's some immediacy for that. The second and the larger pot is the community funding for nonprofits. And this is essentially for the arts and cultural organizations in the county. And the allocations this year have been made by the Board of Commissioners. So what we'll be looking at there is perhaps a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners on some of those or all of those. And that's where the relationship between those two boards is going to be vital. Is how is that money going to be handled? In other words, what's the process going to be? Do we just post a notice and say, send in your application here, or do we actually go out and try to be a little bit more aggressive in soliciting applications? So that's essentially what this committee would work with staff on and then report back to the board. But there's some immediacy to that, particularly I think in the community recreation.
Is it fair to say that we have operational, facilities are operational, I mean, like the grant that you're talking about, you would do that automatically, you're going to go after the money, that grant money?
Okay, this is actually money that is county money that is passing through our budget. So these are not grant funds that we're going to go seek. In other words, these are existing funds.
You're talking about, are you talking about like the Barnersville Community Center and that kind of, the ones we're doing now,
Yes, sir.
primarily?
Yes.
So actually, I think it's three different ones. You got the, let me tell you how I understand this, and I talked to Dr. Green a long time about this. We are going to pass a budget at some point, and that budget is going to go to the Buncombe County Commission, of which Commissioner Belcher and Commissioner Frost are members. And we can go through and say, we don't like item 15. And it's not the normal, it's not the tradition, but that we have done that. And a notable example is the Reynolds Fire Department. That's a supplemental tax, just like ours is. And we didn't like the way, we didn't think they had done due diligence in building the Reynolds Fire Department. And we said, we're not going to approve that. So, and I think there's several commissioners that have approached me that it's really important to get this community fund, Barnesville Community Center, because these folks came to our last meeting, were very vocal about, you really need to do something, we want to know how you're going to do it. So there's, in addition to the calls Ed and I have gotten about the nonprofits coming in and saying, we want to get money, we've also had the people that have gotten money in the past and said, hey, we want to know how you're going to do it this year. Karen?
Point of clarification, the community center funds, are they not already in either the Parks and Rec or the library budget in the line items that were approved by the commissioners to be funded by the CRA beginning July 1? And we're looking at next year, is that right?
There's money in this year's budget for community recreation grants that, as Ed was explaining, will need to be spent by the community clubs by July 1, this current year.
But they haven't applied for a
They-
grant.
That process has not been determined yet.
For the next year. So you're right, yes, this year, yes, next year, no.
But if I'm hearing Fran right, they haven't applied for the grants or gotten the monies for this fiscal year, is that right?
Correct.
That is correct.
So, we're talking about two separate things. So let's talk about one of them.
Okay.
That'd be my recommendation. Let's talk about the community center funding first.
Okay, and that's existing community centers, not any new money.
It's whatever's in the budget
Okay.
This fiscal year.
in this fiscal year.
Okay.
So is there a process that has been in place that has been used by the county for those centers to apply for funding?
We've had been doing this program for about 8 or 9 years now, since the money came back to the department after our master plan was presented back in 2007, I guess it was. And we've done a couple different approaches. Karen, we've done community club for upkeep and maintenance. We've done outreach for new program or existing recreation programs. So it's kind of been a variety. And I guess that's one of the things we'd like to have, maybe some input from some CRA board members to help us figure out what that might be for this year.
And do you have a timeline in mind based on what has happened in the past that the community centers are expecting about when they might apply for a grant for whatever reason?
Early January
Okay.
is when their process they've turned them in the past. And in the past, we've had a board committee, we've had a Parks, Recreation, and Recreation Advisory Board Committee that's made recommendations. So reviewed the applications and made recommendations to our advisory board. That's the process we've had in the past.
Of which Commissioner King's on.
Mr. Chairman, is it your understanding that the CRA board or the commissioners themselves will make the decision about how the community center funds will be allocated this year?
It was my understanding that we would make decisions subject to approval by the commissioners, although the commissioners made it for last year because we didn't exist. Is that your?
I think that what's happened in the last couple of years is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board has made the recommendation and approved that disbursement of funds because it's already existing in this budget.
Because the commissioners approved the general,
The
the
budget.
number, and they
Correct.
just doled it out.
And allowed the advisory committee to make that decision.
Okay.
So following that example, the commissioners have approved the money in this year's fiscal budget, so the a subcommittee of the CRA, this Community Development Committee, could make recommendations at one of our meetings over the next month or so, and then this board could receive those, staff could receive those, and it could come back to us in January
For your review and approval.
for review, and the committee could then maybe look at those, ask questions, do whatever due diligence in advance.
Right, and Steve Garrison has spent quite a bit of time putting together some of those and starting to gather that information for a subcommittee or group.
There are existing criteria,
There've been some criteria, we have quite a rigorous application process that we've gone through and asking for documentation and quotes and proof of nonprofit status and a number of things. So yes, there has been a process we've used in the past.
What is, I guess one of the questions I follow is, what is the purpose? And what are you trying to achieve with these?
We're trying to encourage, support the community clubs that exist in the community or expand existing recreation programs that are offered. We're trying to support some of those groups that, as a Parks and Recreation Department, we've not been able to provide those services. So we've looked to community partners to help us to do those pieces. Community engagement is one of the things we keep coming back to.
Okay.
What is the total amount of money that is approved to give out in this category?
This year it's $42,750.
And how many applicants do you think you will have for that?
Last year, Steve helped me, was it 16 last year? We were averaged somewhere between 11 and 20 applications.
So Chairman, do they come back to us for additional funds? Is that the community development funding list that we've got? For example, there would be a community center that might request, I'm trying to think there's one in Fort Barnesville. I'm trying to think out. Yes, that is requested. Is that additional to this, what she's talking about?
I guess it depends on the timing. This year, we're probably, realistically, you've got a number, 16 applications, they asked for X number of dollars, and the commissioners have allocated $42,750. So basically, it's gonna kind of match up this year. Is that right?
That's when the applications go out and the parameters are set, that's what we hope happens.
And, so I guess to get to Joe's question, Commissioner Doctor's question, I don't think, we didn't earmark, did we earmark who got what of the 42,000, or was that left up to us?
It was left up to the advisor, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
And that's the one that group, we're gonna take over their function, right? Basically. That's the one that David King, Commissioner King was on, but that has now been disbanded when we set the CRA up. Is that correct? Is that your understanding?
I don't remember Commissioner King being,
He was very interested, very concerned about it, and I thought we appointed him to do that, but it's our function now. So I think this, as I understand, this group will make the decision how to dole up the $42,750, and also make rules for the future. I think it's real important in transparency to say, here's how you do this, and here's who's eligible.
They'll make recommendations to the commissioners. Commissioners ultimately make the dollar decisions. Because they have to support whatever the board.
I don't know if this one goes back to commissioners since they've already approved it.
it has not
That
been
one
passed.
won't, right, that one won't, but like the additional money for Big Ivy, that.
Yes.
That type of thing. So the only thing that's really changed is we got to decide who it routes through. And to me, it seems like you've already got committees in place. Why would we want to go and do a new community development funding committee when you already have it in place? They've already been doing that, I know that's just me picking off top.
Well, that's something we need to decide, Karen.
I guess my opinion is, I don't know who those committees already in place are. Are there committees? There aren't any right now.
Well,
There's not a committee at this point.
but there was a board.
And that board disbanded when we became a joint department with libraries.
But could that board become a committee?
Yes?
And you continue to recommend to us thing that with changes, you have another level, another layer that go through, which could slow it down, but could speed it up too, but.
Or could we have one of us on that board?
I would suggest that there's a committee of 3 from this board that works with Fran and Ed to develop, to review their recommended criteria for these grants and report back to this board pretty quickly, if there may possibly our next meeting or the meeting thereafter, sometime between now and Christmas. And so we can get and inform us so these applications can go out to whoever wants them, and then perhaps that committee would review the applications that come in January or whenever, and make a recommendation to this board about how to spend that $42,000. And I certainly think they would want to touch base, because I've been advocating that anyway, what Joe is saying, with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board now, so that they would have input into that.
I think that's a good way. I think that's good, and that, the 3-member committee here would meet with the board, the board that used to be known as the advisory board.
Right.
Formerly known as the advisory board of the Parks and Greenway. Does that sound like does everybody understand where I know we're kind of.
Does that make any sense, Joe? Because I don't want to.
Seems to me you're just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Seems to me you're just adding another level of bureaucracy. You know, I see what Joe's point, why reinvent the wheel, but why have them, bring this group back into fruition and then have them report to us and we have to report it to the county commissioners? Why are we adding that step?
The recommendation, my recommendation on this would be, the first part of what Karen said, is simply that this board appoint a committee to work with staff to set up that process. And then that committee of this board is accountable to this board. In other words, I don't see for, particularly this year with $42,000, that we bring in another committee. In other words, a committee of this board is established. It does the review work and it recommends to this board. That way, if there's any, if there is concern, I mean, particularly if there's a feeling that this might need to go the consultation with the commissioners, that can be decided here. But we're looking for a relatively immediate and quick process so that this money gets out and does what it's supposed to do. Because we're nearly halfway through the fiscal year and we haven't done the first step yet.
I'm not going to throw a stumbling block in there. I'm actually trying to speed that up.
So it looks like we got 2 possibilities we discussed here. One of them is to set up a 3-person board to kind of sort this out. Another one would be, from what I'm hearing from Commissioner Belcher and Matt, is to just delegate it to the board that was existing and let them do it this year. Does that sound the way, is that what you're proposing?
Say that one more time.
Just kind of do it the way we've done it before. Just let the folks that were on that advisory commission decide the distribution, and then we just ratify that versus setting up and then the other one will be set up a 3-person committee to kind of consider that possibility and maybe come up with that plan, maybe not, but just sort this out, and then we'll hear from them probably the next meeting.
Maybe a way to an alternative, maybe to look at both of these options and have a sort of fast, efficient method of getting this money spent. It's going to take a lot of these groups to spend the money and get the receipts and all that by the end of the fiscal year and make this one efficient, but also make that 3-member group responsible for coming up with a process that really has the benefit of a full year, which might bring in more advisory resources and so forth, which really addresses, I think, what Joe's trying to do is to, I assume, maintain some community involvement, which has been there through the years, which is now kind of in flux.
Just a point of information, do you know who's on that committee, that advisory committee now?
There's not a committee.
I understand. The one that was on before we disbanded.
I don't remember.
Okay.
How big was it?
It was 4 advisory board members, and they met in the spring of 12. It's not been this last year, right? One year, a while back.
Yeah, I think it seems to be designing a new piece of property or something. What I don't want to do is interfere with staff, so I didn't know it was like you guys, but what I want to do right now, if there's, the grants and the things that to me sound almost operational, like they gotta get done. Yeah, I don't want to get in the way of that by adding a layer. Does that make sense? Is that kind of?
Yeah, I think that, we'd be adding a layer if we reband this advisory group who hasn't met since 2012, so they're probably pretty rusty. Or not current.
The short guys.
And they're pretty saying, this band is take a hike.
Yeah.
But, I just feel like we ought to be able to make the decisions based on the information that's there just as easily as this other group can. And I think we have to change our ordinance also, because section 10 of the ordinance disbands these groups. So you're gonna have to change the ordinance to reband them so you can have to make a quick decision, so we can then make another decision.
Or you just.
With much respect to Chairman Gann, Commissioner Belcher, and Commissioner Frost, and earlier discussions we've had, I call Fran. So I had this notion that I really wanted to stay in touch with the community, and I really wanted to meet with these folks who were on these boards as they got changed and what the commissioners did. I wanted to keep them engaged with us. And what I learned was that they were not there, which is the only reason, and I apologize, I should have said that up front, was the only reason that I was talking about, let's just put 3 people together and figure this out and get her done. That's
3 people from this commission.
Yeah.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
work with Fran and Ed.
That's what I agree with, 100%.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Skip that.
Well, and also, is it fair, how about doing that and setting the rules for future engagements in future?
Absolutely.
I think that might be a more important function since this time is not as much. Okay, is there a motion to that effect? Make a motion, okay, let me see how I work, to appoint 3 members of our board. And who wants, let's go ahead and just name who wants to be on there. Need at least Eleanor, need one commissioner, Joe or Ellen, y'all want to?
Sorry?
We need at least one commissioner on this, I think, because I would recommend that just
For
for,
money, I'd love to be on.
okay.
I need to.
Belcher, okay, anybody who else wants to be on it? You 3, is that good with everybody? Go ahead and name the people. Those 3 individuals be on the committee to, the Community Development Funding Committee to sort out and distribute the approved $42,750 allocation, and then to make recommendations to the full board about future process and activity of the now disbanded board, if at all.
My only change to what you just said is I feel like this committee of 3 of us needs to bring that recommendation about who gets that funding back to the full CRA board, just so that everybody, when they go out in the community, you all are part of that decision. We'll bring a recommendation,
Okay.
if that's okay.
So okay, I apologize. Who did we just say?
Eleanor, you, and Karen. That's good. That would be a meeting soon, like fairly soon.
Week after Thanksgiving.
Okay, does everybody understand the motion? There's been a motion, Tessier, second, Briggs. Any discussion?
Okay, all right, I'm gonna apologize again.
No, go ahead.
Are they on?
We would be staff to the
They were
committee.
staff, yeah.
We don't need to be on the committee, we will be the staff support.
Okay, everybody know what we got? Motion? Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion to set up the Johnson Belcher Tessier as the Community Development Funding Committee is approved with the instructions. All right, next we have appointment of the Facilities Committee. Let's talk about that.
If I may just speak to that for a minute, this is perhaps something the board wants to consider, in essence, to specialize a little bit. Steve Garrison did a nice list of in effect, all the properties, and we've had this in several different forms and maps and so forth. But one of the things that we as staff very much want to work with the board on is to introduce you to the existing operations. In other words, where we are, that's why we're dragging you to the swimming pool and out to the library, so that you see the properties that we have and the conditions that the various buildings are in. So part of this would be to consider, for the board to consider whether you do want to start developing some specializations. And so it might be a subcommittee on libraries, a subcommittee on recreation facilities, or it may be one committee. And also, I would look at this as a way, as we're working up future capital requests, that this committee would be where we would start working with the board on that. So it would be a long-term, in effect, sort of a long-term commitment to first get to learn what's out there, and then as we start to develop additional projects, we would work with this committee first. So that is the extent of my recommendation on that.
Okay, Ellen?
How many committees are we likely to have?
We decided to go. I don't think we're in uncharted territory. We don't. I would guesstimate. I would say that I would agree with this. I think you got to have sorting things out. I think there's a 10,000 foot view that we all got to understand, and then I think there's getting more down the weeds that I think committees are useful for. I would say my view would be you would definitely need one libraries and one with recreation facilities, and maybe broken down even more swim pools and water parks and community centers. And I mean, there's a lot, and that's something we need to do. But I'm guessing there's going to be probably 4 or 5 different committees before we're finished. And then we've got to think about the funding part and working with Steve and Fran and Ed about what is it we want to work for, and maybe coordinate. We have Ben and Sam here from the city with the, and we appreciate them coming because there's a lot of groups who don't want to duplicate efforts. We want to coordinate with them and meet with them and know what they're doing so that we don't overlap. So I think my guess is going to be we're going to have some on facilities, some on finance, and I'm guessing it's going to end up at least 5 or 4.
So right now, what we would do is a similar committee to what we did before. That would be the facilities committee, which would be, for example, Matt, George, and David. That's the facilities committee. 3 working on staff.
That's one I also looked at. So, and that's why I was asking, how many committees will we have?
Well, it kind of develop. I don't have. That's my guess. I don't have a number that okay, I've got this plan mapped out already because there's a lot of ways we could do this.
We also have the ability to change the composition as we go to.
Yeah.
So it looks like we want to do that this time.
Yeah.
Anybody serve on that wants to.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of room.
Well, and I would guess, and Andy, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think I would envision any of these committees, any member of the CRA can go to. If we have more than 4, we just have to give a public notice, and we probably got to give a public notice anyway. So it's not like whether you're on the committee or not, you can participate. It's not like, well, you can't come because you didn't get appointed to it at all. And that happens all the time with many boards. So it would not be an exclusive membership thing at all. And I think we're going to say so. We get public notice of anything anyway. I just don't think there's any point in trying to do otherwise. That way we don't have to poll the board every time we have a meeting. So the facilities committee, what's the feel of the board? What's the pulse of the CRA?
Well, I'm going to nominate George and Matt for it. I'll see them on.
Now,
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. I'll be coming to them. I don't think I'm ex officio of them, but I'll definitely be coming. But I think that's a good group. And you kind of sort out, there may be, I think how we do the facilities is really more of a committee decision to come back and say, well, you could do it this way, you could do it that way, you could do it this other way. And I think a little more thoughtful discussion, not that we're not thoughtful here, but a little bit more of the in the weeds, kind of like, God, you really need the water park. You know, you really, and what do you want to, what do you really, where are you going? And I think what George said is really good. You always got to say, where are we going? Because we get caught up in procedure, we get stuff done. And I know each one of you we interview, you want to get stuff done. And that's kind of what we're in charge to do, so.
Do you need a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So move that we create a facilities committee with Eleanor and Matt and George.
I think it was Ellen.
Eleanor, she wants to do this too.
Okay,
Put Eleanor, ask Eleanor which one she wants to be.
okay.
Need a commissioner?
Well, I would kind of say the first go around would probably, so let's do 4 on this one. Doesn't have to be 3. 3's not mad, especially if we're just, that's fine. We're going to give public notice of all meetings anyway. So how about those 4? Would you friendly amendment on that? Good, Frost, okay. Any discussion? And they will report back as soon as practical to let us know their thoughts on the options we have in sorting out how we're going to govern. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. And we will appoint those individuals to the Facilities Committee. Next on the agenda, we have communication protocols and process, internal, citizen, and media. Ed, let me recognize you to kind of kick us off on that.
Well, this is really intended to be a discussion topic among the board to sort of stimulate that. Inside the package you received today, there's a public information procedure, and this is something that Steve Garrison worked on for us. Essentially, we want to be able to know how we're going to answer questions. And the questions this is largely intended for staff, and how that we will respond to questions from the public and from the media. And it also, I think, in a way, helps us clarify responsibilities as among the top administrative people of me, Fran, and Steve, kind of what the specializations are going to be. I think from your point of view as board members, we'd like to know, in effect, if there are any areas that you feel particularly you want consultation with the board. If we send anything out, for example, as a press release or a public information request that's responding to something, we're going to copy all of you want. But in essence, I just want to, if you'll look at this and see if this makes sense to you, because one of the key things we need to do is explain this to all of the recreation and library staff. So it's just we're looking at this as part of the process of determining how we're going to do it. So that is strictly there as a conversation starter or stop.
All right, let's kind of go through it step by step. Of course, the purpose is to ensure appropriate management for releasing information to the media and public. Any discussion about that? Well, that's pretty straight up, isn't it? Policy, ensure individuals and public receive accurate and relevant information in a timely manner. Response, I'm just going to go to y'all, so let's talk about that some more. Responsibilities, we have authorized staff to communicate in the respective areas, sharing in libraries, including the CRA and the Community Development Grant Fund. That's going to be huge, folks. I mean, we're a lot of people out there think we're Santa Claus and we just hadn't got down the chimney yet. And, I've cautioned people and everybody listens to me. I said, this first year we're just a break-even budget here, so it's not going to be a lot of money. But nevertheless, that's not the community perception. That's not what you're going to get. And what I don't want is for somebody to talk to Matt, and Matt says, well, I think it's this way, and then talk to me. I say, well, I think it's that other way, and they talk to Karen and say, well, I think it's the third way. So I think the more we can streamline both our systems of doing this and who they to talk to. Especially as we get started, when we're starting something from scratch that's never been done. So, our people, I'm comfortable with that as chairman of this group, that we do delegate to the folks that know. I have on occasion taken media calls myself as chairman, and I'll call immediately and find out what it is, but I feel, it's just kind of like repeating what they tell me instead of, and Joe, you've probably done that too. It's like, well, they called about this, I need to respond. But I think if we have a chain of command where we do kind of do more through the staff, I think we'll be closer to the information that media's going to want. Numbers, staffing, policies. Because a lot of it's going to be past. What have you done before? What are you going to do in the future? And these folks have done it before. They know how to do it. Steve has been the Madison County manager, knows and dealt public and city. And so that's with Fran doing the parks, greenways and rec, the community recreation fund, and community development grant fund, and Steve doing the buildings, maintenance, and also the last two. What's the feel of the board on that? Does this seem like a good way to proceed?
I have a question.
Yeah, George.
This role is going to have obviously a lot of public interface. It's going to have role to play in announcing grants and so forth. And this is the first year of the CRA. It's a brand new thing that most people don't have a lot of information about. And my question relates to the role of the leadership. And I'm wondering whether it's better to identify Ed as a director of a department within the county or as the interim director of the CRA, so that we don't have to go through this reinterpretation of what happens once we end up going through the executive director process.
It does seem maybe it's around semantics here, but calling it County Library Recreation Culture Department, which it currently is, should we call it CRA at this point?
And we want to use just one language and be consistent with that.
I think the way it's written is more descriptive to the public. Libraries, parks, greenways, recreation. I mean, you can change it. I don't think that's a big deal. I follow the one pager. I mean, it's very good. I support what's on the page. If you want to change the way, but
Well,
it's labeled, but I don't.
Is your question about, instead of talking about LRCD, just everything's CRA?
Just
So you have one brand.
that's who we are. Just be consistent in managing that brand. Because I think at some point, when we do go through this hiring process for an executive director, we're going to have to, that person's going to become executive director of the CRA, is he not? Or she?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, right now, we can maybe get some of that off. I just be consistent with what we
So you're just saying change LRCD to CRA?
but I mean, so that was in your interim director.
There's two different, in fact, things happening right now. And the reason we wrote it up the way it is, at least until July 1, we're a county department. So I'm the head of in fact, I am the county department head for the library, recreation, and culture department. You are the board of the CRA, so you represent the new public authority that is being created. So at some point, yes, there will be a transition, but I'm filling two roles right now, and those are somewhat distinct roles. So for example, in the LRCD role, I report to the county manager. In the CRA role, I report to this board. So that's why it's there, and I frankly would feel more comfortable leaving it that way for now, and then making the switch at whatever point in the future there is. So that's why it's there the way it is.
What's the difference between what you would report to the county manager and what you would report to this board?
In practical terms, nothing. It really isn't. But organizationally, we're a county department at this point, meaning the staff. And so it's a distinction that has some meaning in effect inside of the county. As a practical matter, no, it doesn't make any difference. But that's why inside Buncombe County, we appear on the chart as the library, recreation, and culture.
You might kick me out of a bar for saying this, but that sounds pretty legalistic to me. I think I'd go with CRA. And yeah, if they want to get down the weeds and say, well, is CRA part of the county? Yeah, we'll take care of the department. But I don't know, I think it might be hard
If
if
I sit in the shoes and you explain you're running your job, I'd probably ask for a raise, but it's just me.
That's the reason I think, because I've been in this role.
Got that on tape?
And I think sometimes in a previous job, I had 3 titles. And the one that I generally used for public consumption was the one that was the more overarching, broad, futuristic one. And from my point of view, at least looking at this, we're going to move whatever this leadership role is from, we're sort of assuming as a board that you're coming out of the county. We're doing that as convenience, but eventually it's going to convert over. So I just think it's better to go forward than to have to do it twice. But that's just me.
I can get behind that if it's okay. If Ed, feels comfortable with it doing CRA, just change that to CRA and adopt the page.
But it's an interim role as opposed to a director role. Right? That's one of the.
Be in it for a long time.
It's interim on very day.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
If you're comfortable with that. I like the branding. I think sooner the CRA would be in there, then it's like,
We'll make that change. We'll make that change.
is that good with the?
I'm very good with that. I would like to add something to this procedure and responsibilities thing we're talking about here. It seems to me that there may be instances when the media would have a question beyond just numbers or whatever, and might want some input from this board. And I would recommend that you, the spokesperson, and that in your absence, George as vice chair, be the spokesperson, should this broader position need to be represented. Is that okay?
Yeah. I think, I would agree with that.
I don't want to-
I've been on board too, and I think you gotta have some kind of face in addition to the director. And I'm glad to do that, if the board wants to do that.
But the go-to for information is here,
Right.
so it needs to be written. Because, for example, if media calls you today and you got to get the details on the pools over there, you probably can't, you'd be like,
Oh, yeah,
you want to make that first.
Yeah, you want the staff to do that primarily, it seems to me, but if you have a real situation that gets to be stickier, then I think the staff, it's good to have staff with the ability to go to the board leadership and say, we need a voice of the board here.
I would just rather, you could have an issue of some kind of liability or a personnel issue or a financial issue or any one of those things. And I would rather see 1 or 2 people from the board be responsible for being spokespersons than a bunch of us getting phone calls and saying things from our individual perspectives.
So, Chairman, in this, just like if they're getting emails and things like that, or questions and things that just need to be handled, is that part of this too? Is that part of this, as far as communication? Emails that come in,
If they come-
questions
If they're coming, the typical emails that staff get on the library side are, frequently somebody's upset about their overdue fines, yes, I'm going to handle that. If they're concerned about conditions in one of the parks, then Brand's going to handle that. That's 90% of it is the routine emails and phone calls that we get, usually from citizens that are concerned about one particular thing. I think the broader question is if somebody asks a question about, what is the future of the CRA, yes, at that point, yes, I'd like to be able to refer that to the chairman.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm ready to make a motion, and I'm gonna take a stab at it. Okay? There's more left further. Okay, so, I'm gonna make a motion that we adopt a public information procedure as written with the exception of replacing LRCD with the term CRA and adding a bullet under responsibilities that should the above people be unable to be contacted, then it would defer to the chairman and vice chair.
Did you accept the friendly amendment? The interim term, I would recognize. Replace LRCD with CRA interim director. Just that's the way I understand it, that's not correct.
That is correct.
Okay?
Good.
Good, friendly amendment?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Boucher made a motion to adopt with the changes, including the friendly amendment of Mr. Briggs. Ms. Tessier has seconded the motion. I think it's good. I think some of it's just common sense. I mean, some of it's, but I think we still need to have it down so that when there's a question, and I would encourage to go to Joe's question. If you get an email, the way I'll tell you how I do it. When I get an email on something technical, I will forward it to Ed and say, Ed, would you copy all of us with the response? And that way we all know what's going on, because someone may know Eleanor, not know Joe, and says, well, what are you doing with the Leicester Community Center? And you automatically forward that to, I guess actually that would go to Steve. And then Steve would copy all of us. I think it's real important for all of us to be copied with everything, even if it's real. I would say if it's personal, David Gancher, the biggest idiot that's ever lived, I can probably handle that one. I get those, yes, I can do that. But if it's anything, how could you make that decision? How could you vote to make that decision? I think it's fair to send the rationale to everybody, even if it was maybe directed at one CRA member. But, just use your discretion. Now, these guys have been around the block, so I don't know that'll be a big issue. But I do think it's good to put it down. So, any other discussion on the motion and second here?
So regardless of what the question is, whether it involves greenways, parks, or buildings, facilities, we refer everything to him, and he can refer it in Fran and Steve.
Really, we're comfortable, and actually I think we prefer that, if it's clearly a recreation question, feel free to send us right over. So no, I'll, if you only remember one, you can send it to me, but rest assured, I'll send it to Fran. And part of the exercise here that's for us is we're still learning how we're going to do this ourselves. So this is good for us to work this out.
Well, and I don't think it'll be all, man. I think there'll be some you'll just answer. Where's your next bit? What did you think about Zeugner Pool?
I don't think I'm getting any emails, except for friends and people like that.
I don't know. Word's getting out there. I don't know.
That's what friends are leaving it out.
Well, you have it now, and they understand if it's all right, just make sure that you copy all of us with responses, so everybody knows what's going on, even if it wasn't directed at them. Is that good with people? Have that understanding? Okay, any other discussion of the motion? If not, call question. All those in favor of adopting the public information procedure proposal as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Then we will proceed with that. All right, next on the agenda we have review existing parks list, plans for future, and leadership for the future.
That sounds like a whole new.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm still fighting, that's wrong. It looks pretty close to being right, but it's not.
2 hours.
It's about 5 minutes fast, but that was stuck there. I keep on looking over there. What's the,
All right,
what kicks off here in a minute?
On the discussion of just the facilities, again, the staff is very deliberately trying to get you to visit facilities, so this time Steve Garrison figured out how to put the directional link in here, so now there's, so literally, anytime you're out and about and you're near one of those facilities, we encourage you to take a look at it. So that was the extent of the staff's agenda here. At some point now that we have a facilities committee, we anticipate doing a more in-depth work with that committee. And one thing that I would, like to get the board's feedback on is the next meeting, which would be December 10th, 2 weeks from today. We want to bring you to the East Asheville Ranch on Tunnel Road.
Is that when it's all fixed up and doesn't need any help?
Oh, that's why we're taking.
Oh, that's the other one.
That's the last one we're going to.
But I want to ask either your forbearance or tell us to redirect on this, that will be somewhat of a challenging place to meet. Because the rec center part, which the city operates, they have rented the rec center to Leaf, so we can't meet in the meeting room. We'll actually have to meet in the very small library for a while. We'll be able to go over to the Leaf offices at 4:30. They have clear time for us there, so it'll be another sort of disjointed meeting of being in one place, and then in this case, we only have to move about 75 feet to the other part of the building. But for us, the staff feels it's important that you see the ones that we've identified as the most grievous needs. So if you're comfortable as a whole board doing that, we'd like to continue that.
I would like us to kind of keep track of the ones we go to. And when everybody goes to one, the chairman will do a first one to get there is $50 prize.
Yeah, probably don't spend $200 in gas.
Just to make it interesting. All right. Any other discussion on the existing parks list, plans for the future, and leadership for the future?
What is the, and we don't have to do that today, we can certainly put it off, but what is the thinking behind those two agenda items, plans for the future and leadership for the future? What are you looking toward as the meat of that discussion?
Well, I think those were actually carried over from the previous agenda, so staff does not have any particular agenda regarding those.
And to some extent, when we did policy, communication policy, we probably took a little of that pressure off at that time, because we did establish, we did reaffirm that these people are taking care of this stuff, and the communication's going through them. So to me, in the meantime, we've kind of taken care of some of that without. That's what I think.
Sounds like a great January discussion. Mr. Chairman, I have two questions. I have been referring requests for information to planning. I'm hoping you've gotten at least one. And I'm wanting to know if there is an update on the procedure that we as board members might advise folks in the community about the other part of the community development stuff, or is that something that the community, that protocol, is that something that the community development committee needs to also address?
They are. We'll go back. I answered the last question instead of the first couple ones. But we have gotten several inquiries. We're telling them that we're working to get a board committee together to work on that process and procedure. And so hopefully that will happen real soon here.
I think one of the things too, we got to be really careful about that. I think Chairman, said something about it, but people got to really understand that this is not a place where they can just all of a sudden, sandbox. You're going to start asking for money. That's not what this is. We have an oversight over X number of dollars. We have to be very discerning in that. And I think we will be, but I don't think
attorney, I'm going to talk about Mr. Westall.
Yes. Okay.
We have good news. Jack Westall has accepted.
Very good.
And one thing I'd like to consult with you about is when we need him. I was thinking this meeting we didn't, and maybe the next one we don't either, since that's going to be still partially a building tour. But he has agreed, and part of this fee is $225 an hour. And, he was happy to accept, and he's at our disposal.
Could we make a formal motion to?
We actually approved him in the minutes
We did.
last meeting. I was a little unclear about that, so I read the minutes, but I had to call him back and tell him the news was worse than I thought. He actually
Okay, good. Good anticipation of that board. All right. Yes, sir.
I do want to encourage you before you leave to take a loop through this library. This is the South Oakland branch. Essentially, this is the standard that we build to. So we have about 5 of the branches that are similar design to this, similar scale. This is a 1986 building that was enlarged in 2003. It's about 8,000 square feet. But this is our basic branch library that we have been doing throughout the city and the county. The Fairview branch, the Lester branch, this branch, North Asheville, are all very similar design. West Asheville is roughly the same, but it's a little bit older. And actually, the granddaddy of them all is Black Mountain. That was the first branch basically this design. That one goes back 40-some years. But this is essentially what we have been building throughout the city and the county in the last 15 years.
And to go to something Matt said last time, what's different about this one than it was before, and going toward what's the library in the future? I mean,
All right, well, look.
I mean, we can see it, but give us a preview, and so was
Yeah, I'll give you a preview in this sense. This building was designed 12 years ago, from the time we actually started working on the drawings. The library space was increased probably about 50%. And when I'm saying library space is the space on the other side. The biggest single piece of this building was building this community room. So that's been one of the changes in emphasis, is that we've added more program space for the library, and then of course we put this out to community groups and organizations. The other thing, of course, is in the library side is you're seeing more space devoted to computers, seating, children's areas have gotten larger, and to some extent because of the equipment that we're working with now, staff spaces have gotten larger. So what we would build now wouldn't be terribly different from this. It would be more permanent. The arrangement would be different, but the space allocations would still be pretty similar. And when we talk about East next time, we're going to be looking at a building that we really cannot make this large. So we'll have to set some priorities as to how we're going to allocate space there. So, but this is a good baseline for what we consider to be a good library.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
I have one thing. I'm curious how these new committees that we formed, how do they organize? Is that through staff contact with us when we meet? How often? That sort of logistics.
I think we'll put, speaking for myself and Fran, to interrupt, is that the first priority for us will be meeting with the community fund committee. We feel we do have an fairly urgent deadline there. So I would expect we'll be checking your calendars early next week. I mean, not to meet early next week, but we'll try to get that meeting set up very shortly.
But I think to go through Ed and set up the facilities and all the ones, that would be good, because I think there all should be staff at the committee meetings. And then I would ask that a step further, that the staff notify everybody when it's going to be. We give public notice of them once it's set, and then everyone has the opportunity to go and fully participate. Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that the committees meet at the library for the sake of the staff, so they don't have to go somewhere else every time this meeting, unless they Show us.
Down at Pack,
Pack Library.
on Haywood Street.
Maybe Terry, maybe the big room we got the commissioners, which is very close, and it's nice. And I hear you.
Well, there's probably room in the new courthouse that was open after 85 years.
Yeah.
The building that just opened last week. Okay, any other business coming for us? So our next meeting will be December 10, I believe. And we have we said East Asheville Library,
East and 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock instead of 3:30. Well, it was a combination of me and I'm still late, but thank you. So 3 o'clock next time. Is that still good with everybody? 3 to 5, try to keep on that timeline. All right, is there any other discussion? Any member wish to be heard? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Matt, second. Karen, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Thank you.